I want you to look at this tweet for a second. This is from an account called CJ, and this person says, "This is how men go to jail." Now let's scroll up just so you can see the context of what they're talking about. So, this is a father defending his child from a woman who grabs the kid by the neck. Um, and look what this account says. If I push a man 8 inches taller than me because I'm mad and he doesn't move and then punches me in the face, the cops are siding with me. You notice the little emoji she puts there, right? Little heart emoji, little loving emoji, indicating that they know how to work the system. They know how to work the system against men. They know how to use and weaponize abuse. And it's not even abuse in this case. It's mutual combat. Many times a female can go and cause all kinds of assaults against the man, verbal, physical. All a man has to do is respond, and he's the one that's criminalized. And he's the one that gets the consequences and the accountability. Because these women know, they understand, and they know how to work the system. And just remember, if a woman does celebrate violence or understands how to work the system, chances are she's probably abusive herself. And chances are she's very dangerous. And it's important to recognize these symptoms in females, especially women who populate the internet and invade men's spaces on the internet. Every time a woman goes on a man's space and throws her weight around there, it always usually ends up bad for the men that are directly involved. We've seen that with Ed Pisco. We're seeing that with some creators now in some of our indie spaces. And a lot of females are now taking advantage of using their prowess, their skills, whatever you want to call it, to get their way in these circles. And I believe that's how Gamergate started. But I don't know. I'm just positing this out there. But this reminds me, or this would be a nice segue to a Kneon from Clownfish TV's tweets about internet bullies. Kneon of Clownfish TV has been posting regularly on internet bullies, and he's been putting up more tweets about the comic book industry. And he's doing his own thing regarding the Google algorithm and how a lot of websites are being affected by the changes in the Google algorithm, and some websites will probably end up dying because of decrease in traffic, but that's a whole other issue. I just find it interesting that he's been putting this out there as of late. He writes, "I wish I could tell you that internet bullies go away if you just keep your head down and do your thing, but they don't. They might eat you last. They'll eat you once they run out of bigger targets. It's who they are. They're destructive by nature." And we did see just in the case of the comic book industry and the internet mob connected to the comic industry, how they ran a man to his grave. They really do feed off of weakness, and unfortunately, knowing that they can't do that effectively, they will do it again. And it really is a lot like cyborgs, like Terminators. You can't reason or bargain with them. All they understand is fear. They need to know you'll fight back, and they'll eventually go find an easier target. And the thing with Kneon is this: Kneon is a professional who used to work in the comic industry, so he understands just how cannibalistic it is in that industry. And again, it's just all the more reason why I'm all for just letting the industry die. There's no salvaging it. The sales are bad. Comic book shops are closing. Websites are closing. It's a shrinking industry in the American West, while manga continues to thrive. And these conversations about floppies versus thicker books are being had now in the indie sphere. You have creators now taking polls on what their customer base would prefer. And there is a serious conversation now more than ever about whether or not floppies even have a place in comics today. And in my personal opinion, with the comic shops closing, comics not really being available in our magazine racks in our local corner stores anymore, yeah, the need for floppies is really dwindling. And people are going to make the case for the Transformers comics. Yeah, one comic out of what, thousands that are being released in the Western market right now. And again, you go to the bookstore and the shelves are flooded with manga. And manga are stacked with stories and pages. They're not floppy sized by any stretch of the imagination. They are themselves self-contained stories, a lot of content, a lot of meat in them. So now that conversation is being had now for creators in the indie sphere, and it's going to shift. It's going to cause a shift in production, the timeliness of production, which may result in the kind of demand that's out there in the market. And if Western creators can sustain that, if Western creators can compete, because here's the thing: you are no longer competing with the mainstream comic industry. They're imploding. The bigots and the racists in the comic industry, they're destroying that industry. It's going to die. Your competition is not the mainstream. Your competition is manga and the strides that manga has made to implement its status and imprimatur in our society. And for any Western creator that wants to have that kind of success, you need to study how manga is doing and recapture the American audience, recapture the American fascination of comics and what made it so golden and so valuable in our zeitgeist, and bring it back to the American fold. Because right now, the American comic scene, both in the self-destructive mainstream as well as the currently imploding indie sphere, they're losing to manga. They're absolutely losing to manga. And I go back to my convention that I was at a few weeks back. Nobody there went and bought floppies. There were lots of long boxes of floppies, and not a single person that went there even bothered to look at the floppies. Heck, there were indie creators with their own IP had floppies of their stuff. Beautiful looking floppies. The artwork was pretty good. The presentation was beautiful, but nobody was interested. They're going to spend money on comics. They want complete stories. They want a complete arc. They want something of meat and content. And the American comic market is flooded with floppies. And indie creators are now taking the time to have that serious conversation about it and how to go about where do they go, where do they navigate from where they're at right now in terms of creating and producing books out there. And should they finally start producing full-length books or graphic novels or anthologies, kind of like Ed Piskor's Red Room? Should they start doing that? The crowdfunding model isn't sustainable for floppies, and the only real way you could have a success in floppies would be if you had a large enough fan base on a website where they can go and you're able to produce books monthly. You're able to meet those deadlines monthly and produce those books. But that's easier said than done. And I don't know of any indie creator that really has done that successfully. And it got me thinking. Just I often have these thoughts of when I go into the comic shop and I see very little people now in the comic shelves. They're usually all in the back. They're in their Yu-Gi-Oh playtimes or their World of Warcraft playtime. All the tabletop games that I have no real knowledge of, admittedly. But you go into these shops and there's not much traffic in the comic shelves. You'll go to the shelf with the new comics for the week. I don't see anybody going through those. They'll go to the back where the graphic novels are, or the long boxes with back issues for sale, or they'll check the action figures in the back, the collectibles in the back. They'll check the cards, all things associated with tabletop games, or you'll see some people there just going through those things, and you'll see peak interest there. But the rest of the comic shop where the comics are, there is nobody really picking them up, and they're not talking about it. They're not really having conversations about those books. There's no interest in them anymore. There's no desire to know what's going on in comics right now because the stories are not intriguing. The influencers or the writers behind these books, they have a lot of stigma attached to them. Most recently, the stigma of being murderers, driving a man to his grave. And the comic cons, to their credit, are active in inviting celebrities and content creators and influencers outside of the comic medium to rent tables because they know that comic owners alone are not going to sustain them financially. That's why you'll see a comic convention and you'll see celebrities, or dare I say porn stars, with tables, because they got the money to pay for it. The comic themed conventions cannot sustain themselves. Again, I go back to the convention that I was at a couple weeks back in Pennsylvania, and there was little to no interest in comic books. The young people, they were there for everything else. They were there for the manga. They were there for bracelets of all things. They were there for maybe a Funko Pop or two. They were there for the Wii table or the PS3 table. They were there for that. PS5. I'm sorry. Don't crucify me. I'm not a gamer. Okay, I know I said PS3. I'm a PS5. Okay, if that's not the latest one, what can I tell you? I'm not a gamer, so admittedly I don't know much about gaming, which is why I don't cover the whole thing with the Sony and that recent controversy, because I don't play games, and I know there's a lot to chew up on that one, so I don't talk about it as a result. But the stigma of the manipulation and the violent tactics by some of the figureheads in the comic industry, it reflects in their pages. There's no aspiration or inspiration. There's only murder in their hearts. There's a darkness in their hearts, and it reflects totally in their books, in their writings, and the human nature can pick it up. Instinctively, when we read something or watch something, we want to be entertained. We want to be inspired. We want to aspire to be something better than we are today. So when you read a book and there's a lack of aspiration and just heavy on propaganda and lecturing, you tend to not want to go back and read it. You tend to grit your teeth a lot and like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel upset. I don't want to be always like looking over my shoulder because the writers of these books hate my skin color or they hate my sexual orientation. They hate the fact that I'm you could be a white heterosexual and you know that these writers instinctively hate you. The creators of these books hate you because, dare I say, you're a white man who loves women. Or if you're a person of color who thinks on the other end of the political spectrum, you're an Uncle Tom or you're something lesser because you betrayed your culture, you betrayed your cause, in spite of the fact that these people have no fuck all about the culture that you're a part of. Just their own manufactured idea of what your culture is. It's a type of virtue signaling that's really steeped in racism and bigotry. And then let's call these people what they are. They're racists, they're bigots, extreme hatred in their heart. You think Ramon Villalobos, who hates white people, you think he's the only one in the comic industry that thinks that way? Oh, there's a lot of I guarantee you Alex DeCampi hates white men. I can promise you she hates white men, especially white masculine men. They'll tolerate the men that comb their hair to the side and wear thick glasses and tend to talk with an extra lisp and move a certain way. They'll be friendly to those guys. But if you're a man who has good bone structure and you actually work for a living with your hands and you break a sweat off your back, they probably look down on you and say, "Oh, that's a man who's toxic." Pure toxicity. They hate that kind of man. That's why all the male superheroes are demasculated in their books, or they're turned gay. They gotta destroy the image of masculinity to break you down. And look, I'm not one of these people that think, "Oh, we gotta save the cape books. We gotta save superhero books." No, admittedly, some of the best books are not superhero books. So I'm not saying, "Oh, we gotta save our superhero books." No, let the comic industry die. Just let it die. It's not salvageable. Comics themselves will not die. Just the other day, I got in the mail E.C. Seeger's Volume 1 of Popeye. And it's a beautiful looking book. It's absolutely, like, I'm looking through it and just, it's rich in knowledge and history and just quality content. I went to the Fantagraphics bookstore, online bookstore where Ed Piskor's books are. And that volume of Popeye was sold out. So I had to go to eBay and get it. And I got a good deal for it. That book goes up as high as 100, but I found one seller who I negotiated a deal with, and he sold it to me for a good deal with shipping. And I tell you, it's just a beautiful book. It's absolutely amazing. And I just the first few pages alone, you're edified by its history and the context with which the stories were written. And that's the kind of aspiration and inspiration that is missing in modern comics. And this is why manga thrives because it rewards masculinity. It rewards inspiration. Heck, I do a weekly series on my YouTube channel, live streams, in which I talk about indie comic outliers. And I've done a couple on some mangaka. I did Ipatu, the creator of Sugumi Project, and how he's one of the few manga artists who doesn't rely on photo references. He actually draws his own backgrounds. He does his own backgrounds. He's big on the sketch it, cross hatching. A lot of mangaka use screen tones. He doesn't use screen tones in his books. It's amazing stuff when you look at how a lot of these mangaka are dedicated artists, and you could see it in the pages of their books. It resonates, and a lot of readers can see right through it too. They see right through that, and it just inspires them to put more money down for that artist's next project. But that's what's missing in modern comics. Instead, you get the aura of hatred and darkness in their hearts. And that's the legacy these people want to leave in the comic industry, in the comic books that are infesting. Let me say it again. The comics that are infesting these comic shops are full of hatred and darkness and bigotry. And that's why nobody's picking up these pieces of garbage, because they're not going to be lectured. They're not going to be told how much they themselves are the scum of the world. They're done with it. They're absolutely done with it. There was a fear of, oh, we don't want to encourage a mob mentality and start going after these people. No, you don't have to go after anybody, but there's nothing wrong with holding them accountable and just letting them know, hey, your stuff is shit and your attitude is shit. I'm not going to pay for you. I'm not going to invest in you anymore. I'm not going to drop another dime in your books anymore. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to drop another dime in the company that publishes your shit. You don't like my money? You don't like who I am? You don't deserve my money. And you don't deserve my attention. And yes, you got to starve these people of everything, not just money, but of attention. They have a very destructive nature, as Kneon from Clownfish TV would say. Absolutely destructive by nature. And I think they understand with us having passed the first month anniversary of Ed Piscor's passing, they're thinking that, this is gonna boil down. It's already boiling down there. The villages start coming out of the woodworks, and then they'll go back to their usual ways, their destructive ways, their very hateful and bigoted ways, like nothing happened. And it's getting warmer out there, and we're getting closer to election season, so it's gonna get really spicy now. And you're gonna see their claws start coming out at people that have a different opinion, and they're gonna make sure that they demonize them. They are destructive by nature, so don't be afraid to push back at them now. Maybe it's time they really felt the brunt of it and understand, hey, we're done with your bigotry. We're done with your hatred. We're done with your racism. And yes, we are done with the destructive nature of your heart. That shit doesn't belong in the pages of a comic book. It's time to get back to fun and enjoy picking up a book and reading it and feeling aspired and inspired. Our kids don't have much to go on in these days anymore. They run into games because games are like the last bastion of escapism, and even that's now being compromised. It's like a big web. It's like a worldwide web ensnaring all images of aspiration and inspiration for our kids, so they don't grow up to be anything other than demoralized and already self-defeated. But it doesn't have to be that way. Or does it? But what do you guys think? I think I rambled on for quite a bit. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. If you like aspirational books, I have 2 graphic novels, Street Champion Road Warrior Drake and Beast Citizen Road Warrior Drake. Beast Citizen Road Warrior Drake currently being worked on right now, expected to ship by the end of this year. So grab both books, and I think you'll enjoy them. Both full-length graphic novels, self-contained story, but part of a bigger arc. So you'll have fun reading them, and they'll be a worthy addition to your library of books. So pick up a copy, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. I will see you guys later. Take care and have a great rest of your day.